Congrats on getting beyond 1 million. What got you here won't always get you there. This is a podcast for entrepreneurs who want to reach beyond their 7-figure business and scale to 8, 9, and even 10 figures. I'm Brad Weimert, and as the founder of Easy Pay Direct, I have had the privilege to work with more than 30,000 businesses, allowing me to see the data behind what some of the most successful companies on the planet are doing differently. Join me each week as I dig in with experts in sales, marketing, operations, technology, and wealth building. And you'll learn some of the specific tools, tactics, and strategies that are working today in those multi-million, 8, 9, and 10-figure businesses. Life can get exciting beyond 1 million. Chris Haddad.
Yeah.
I appreciate you hanging out today, man.
I appreciate you hanging out today. Have we already started during this entire chat? Because I love doing that. I like for my own show, I like to have the show just start right in the middle of the conversation, just because I think it's more natural. It feels like a couple of friends hanging out instead of a very formal interview.
We have a rule in the studio and anytime we're recording that we never turn the cameras off.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you? Yeah.
You just never turn the mics off, never turn the cameras off, because very often the comfortable, enjoyable conversation is when you're not recording, right?
I absolutely agree. I even tell people when I record my show, they'll start talking because they haven't seen them in a while. And I'm like, no, save it. Save it for when we're actually recording the show. Because that's the good stuff. That's what people really like, I think, is seeing people who are like friends talking about this stuff and having that kind of vibe and whatnot. Or at least, I don't know, I just like the more organic conversation aspect of it instead of like interviews as these things go.
Yeah, that was for me one of the core reasons that I rationalized building out a studio before I had really anything. It wasn't that I was like, I need to record this thing and capture it.
Yeah.
I was just like, I have a lot of interesting conversations and I will probably want to hear them later, right? Like I will probably want to listen to them when I'm older and go back. I want to capture. And I wanted a cool place to hang out, but it's exactly that.
It seems like a cool place.
It's super fun. We got a little keyboard in the corner and some music and a full
set up some drums. Set up some drums, and when I come to Austin, we'll jam. It'll be fun. I haven't played.
I think this is very possible. Yeah. Question is, when do you come in Austin?
I don't know. I'm traveling again now. My wife is doing a lot better. COVID is calming down a bit, so I have a couple of trips planned. I'm actually looking for speaking gigs and things like that now. So if you know some shit that's going on in Austin or a mastermind or something, invite me down. I'll come drop some knowledge for people. Some knowledge bombs. Yeah.
I think we can figure that out.
Mm-hmm, I go too. I like Austin.
So we met years ago, years and years ago, in fact, because
at least 10 now. Yeah.
I grew up in direct sales. And at some point I realized that I couldn't keep selling knives for my whole life. But more importantly, that I wanted to be really deliberate about my next step. So I built this list of criteria for what I wanted to do in the next venture that got me into credit card processing. But I was like beating on doors, trying to cold call and sell credit card processing, which I did, but is a grind. And I got to the point where I was at about 10 grand a month in residuals. And one of my clients reached out and said, hey, will you run operations for my company? And I'll give you equity in the company and it'll be great. And I thought, all right, this will be a good opportunity to put some money in the bank before I dive into credit card processing and formally start a company doing that. So this is the frame for how we met, because I partnered with this guy, came in and ran operations, and we hired you to write some magical copy.
You're going to do a launch. You're going to do a launch on a real estate investing. I think it was like a high-end real estate investing kind of thing, if I remember correctly. And and you guys hired me. I believe you paid me $30,000 to do all of the launch stuff because I was doing all the stuff with Jeff Walker, and I wrote all the stuff. And then later on, you had to make a really unpleasant phone call to me, which was you called me up and you were, because I had done all my end of the work, or most of it, up until the point where we're actually going to get the launch going. And then you called me up and said that the person who was your client had said that they needed the money back, basically. And my response was like, no, we're just not doing. I'm not going to do all this work for you for free. Also, that guy, total scam artist, right? Like, we don't need to mention who he actually is, but he strikes, like, looking back now, being older and wiser and in my mid 40s, which I think you are as well now. He just strikes me as the classic con man archetype. right? Like absolute charming, can talk his ass off, will tell you anything you want to hear, and then just kind of disappears and goes off into the ether somewhere. So I don't know if there's like a level of sociopathy going there or just some narcissism and some lack of ability to understand that other people matter. But it's funny, and being in the marketing business, we run into these people all the time, right? Like we run into scammers, sociopaths, and generally horrible people on a regular basis because to a degree that this business can attract some of those people into it. So it's interesting kind of keeping your radar up about the assholes that are in the world out there. Yes.
Well, I think that there's so, like today we process credit cards for a tremendous number of information products, right? So
you built that company like crazy.
Yeah. We've got all these, Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, Grant Cardone, Frank Kern, Jeff Walker, Ryan Dice, a bunch of the OG internet marketers, a bunch of the new ones. And so my radar to this now is very, very sensitive. 10 years ago, it wasn't quite as sensitive.
Well, how old are you now? I'm 44. Are you like right around?
I'm 41.
41, a couple years younger. Yeah.
Yep. 41. And so that individual, the efficacy of the product, I'll say, I can't really validate that it was credible.
I went through the product. It was really nicely produced, right? I remember like it was like the packaging was great and it came in this nice case because they sent me one when I was doing the work on it and stuff like that. But it was total fluff. It was all sizzle, no steak, really, as far as I could tell, and very expensive. Yeah.
Yes, and that sounds about right. And I think that you hit it on the head, which was I think that he was pathological. I think it was like he was convinced that what he was saying was true.
Yep.
And he had convinced himself of that. And that's a really fascinating
I think he had just been bullshitting his way through his whole life, right? I think he had just been bullshitting his way through his whole life and probably went through some pretty tough stuff when he was younger that led to that. Like, there's usually that comes from parents and stuff like that, and just had kind of gotten used to bullshitting everything all the time and probably fell for it because people do that, right? Like if you tell the same bullshit over and over again, eventually you'll start believing it. Just look at politics, for God's sake. Yeah.
Well, eventually, we parted ways because of several of these things. And I think as I got more clear on it, it became easier. And that was really when I started Easy Pay Direct. And then I think probably a couple years later, we reconnected.
In Florida.
Yes, right. And so your background, so that was when you were doing sort of copywriting for contract, right? And you were doing a bunch of copywriting.
So the short version is we had met when I was working with Jeff Walker when we met, right? So I'd done freelance copy for several years, gotten pretty good at it, was making, low six figures, $200,000-300,000 a year or something like that as a freelancer, not doing bad at all. And then I started doing my Michael Fiore relationship advice stuff. Like my Michael Fiore went on Rachel Ray. And then we built out Text the Romance back, Text Your Ex back, Secret Survey, Language of Desire, built that company up to 8 figures over the course of a couple of years on ClickBank, just doing information marketing. And then I got super duper sick with Lyme disease and had to go to Florida for 7 freaking months to get treatment for Lyme disease. And you were in Florida, so we hung out a couple times. And you got to hang out with me when I was at my mentally and physically least healthy, basically, of my entire life. Like my skin was ashen and I was just 20 pounds overweight and really angry and miserable and bipolar all the time and whatnot. So it was nice to have a friend I could hang out with there,
Well, and you know what? The funny thing about that is that I actually love that.
Oh, did you?
Well,
what is that?
I love that.
You like to watch me suffer. I understand.
That is not it. No, I love that because when people are in pain, they tend to be who they are in some form. Yeah. And, sometimes they lash out and they're frustrated or they're, it's a loud version of a particular emotion. Yeah. But I think you can get to know people in those moments. And frequently it either connects you or pushes you apart.
I agree. So, I think you and I definitely bonded during the whole thing. We bonded over that. We bonded over that one time you had that incredibly hot girl working with you at what was it? Yannick's thing, probably, whatever else. Yeah. I'm just remembering she was a beautiful woman. I think we definitely bonded there. And for me, it was just, I was in such a miserable, horrible place in my life. And just having somebody I could hang out with from business world who knew me from that world, as opposed to just being the guy with the IV in his arm, desperately trying to stay alive while his body is betraying him, was pretty nice, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's back into copy. You said a bunch of cool things. So Jeff Walker doing copywriting for contract, and then that rolled into you having your own products. How did you first, let's go beginning to start with, but then I want to talk about the building of your alter ego.
Yeah, sure.
ClickBank and stuff.
Absolutely.
But why copy in the first place?
Desperation. I had no other choice. So the short version is, and I've told these stories many, many times, but the short version is my dad died when I was 19. At the time, I thought I was going to get into like traditional advertising because I've always been kind of creative, but didn't think you could make a living by writing creative stuff because I grew up in central Massachusetts where that simply was not a thing that made any sense. I didn't know any writers or anything like that. Anyway, I fell into copywriting after I got fired from a job writing greeting cards for a living when I was 26 or so, and just kind of fell into copy because I literally had nothing else I could do. I had been fired from every job I ever had. I had no real direction or drive for anything. And all of a sudden I discovered this copy thing and got sucked into direct marketing and went from making $30,000 gross one year to making like 220 grand the next year with copywriting, which was a pretty massive, awesome thing. And I did that for 5 or 6 years. I worked for a bunch of people you've heard of and kind of became A-lister, I guess, relatively quickly, which was pretty funny because I had no self-esteem at the time. But then I did this thing that the really smart copywriters do is I woke up one day and realized I was making other people really, really rich and I wasn't getting rich myself. I was doing fine. I was making more than I ever thought I would. But basically, if you know Jay Diebold, right? Jay Diebold and Alan Sultanic. Do you know those guys?
No.
Okay. Well, they're internet marketers, very successful guys. And they had hired me to write a letter called Mobile Money Machines, which was a magic software ClickBank thing way back in the day. And they gave me 25 grand for it, which is good fucking money. Never going to complain about making 25 grand for what was about a day and a half of work. I'll take it. But then they did the launch and they did like $10 million in sales in their first month. And I was like, I asked Jay at one point, I'm like, hey, Jay, man, how's the offer going? He's like, oh, dude, it's fucking crushing it. It's crushing it. And he told me some numbers. I'm like, that's fucking awesome. And I said, you should send me a bonus. He's like, yeah, man, I'm going to send you a bonus. And he did. He sent me a check for $5 grand. And
which was nice of him.
It was nice. Listen, man, that's a nice watch. Like whatever, cool. I've had somebody else send me a nice watch. It's actually right here. That was good too. But that just kind of broke me a little bit where I was like, holy fucking shit. I wrote this and they're making all this money. And I'm done. Like I made my 30 grand off it, but I had nothing coming the next month. Right. Like I was just trading money for time, money for time, money for time. It was a lot of money for a relatively small amount of time, but it was still money for time. And that's what got me off my ass to finally start doing my own offers. So I created one called Text Your Wife Into Bed, just because I was single at the time. And being a writer by nature and kind of a horrifyingly erotic person in other ways, I ended up just creating this product because I was talking to Mike Hill one day about doing a sexting product. And he was like, you should do one for married guys. And I'm like, yeah, I'll call it Text Your Wife Into Bed. So I created that offer, having no idea what I was doing, put up a VSL, and had the most hilarious experience when I put it out because I saw people that we know from business world buying the product. I'm not going to mention their names, but they were people. And then I had various friends of ours writing me for specific advice on what to say and how to say it and all that other kind of shit. But that kind of got things going. And originally I was working in the male side of the niche, basically pickup. So I had Text Your Wife Into Bed, and then we had one called Oral Fixation, which is about how to get a girl to want to give you a blowjob. The most brilliant idea for product I ever had, I personally think. I was like, what should I use as an upsell? Well, that's what guys want. And then
hold on. Interlude here, because before we jumped on, I actually found a headline from that specific offer.
Oh, did you? Oh, please, let me tell you.
And the headline from that offer is, what has 2 thumbs and loves blowjobs? Your wife, girlfriend, and every woman you know, ... after you watch this astonishing free video.
That is a fucking good headline, I have to say. That's a pretty, that offer did pretty well for us. But I did that. And then I spoke at Jeff Walker's product launch formula event that year, back in 2009, 2010. And I spoke at that, did really well at it. I had asked Jeff if he would have me on his stage, and he did, and it went really, really well. And afterwards, this woman named Amal Wagner came up to me and said, I want to put you on television. And I was like, who are you and what do you mean? But she was a PR agent who'd worked with a lot of people in the Harv Eker kind of world, things like that. And she said that she thought I had a certain level of charisma. She wanted to see what we could do. She asked me what I had. I said, I have Text Your Wife Into Bed. She said that's too dirty. What else you got? And so we just came up with the idea for Text the Romance Back, which was the kind of cleaner, more female oriented version of that. And the short version is that got me on the Rachel Ray show. There's a clip. If you go on YouTube and search for Michael Fiore, Rachel Ray, Fiore for Fiore, you'll see me with no mustache and about 10 years younger in a suit on the Rachel Ray show, kind of talking about sexting. And that the credibility from that really gave us a boost to be able to build that company out. But within 2 years, we were doing 8 figures gross, and I was making like $2 to $3 million a year personally off those offers, which was pretty fucking cool. It was pretty fucking cool. It was pretty, especially because I was so sick at the time, right? So I couldn't really work. So if things had not gone how they did, it would. I mean, if I was broke when you and I were hanging out in Florida, I wouldn't have been able to afford the treatment. I would end up having to move back with my mom, basically. So it worked out. Yeah, I got lucky.
Life is crazy. Yeah.
Having money is better than being poor is the thing. I am not a greedy person. You know, we have friends who are really into the sports cars and shit like that. I'm not. I don't care. Like, I don't care about the watches. I don't care about the sports cars. I don't like to show off. I have a Subaru that's been in my driveway that I have to buy a new battery for every 6 months because I forget to drive it, like that kind of thing. But money for me is like safety. Because like it's the only thing that can keep you safe when the world goes to hell, and the world keeps going more to hell. So yeah, scary times. What can you do?
Well, something that people find out about you over time is that you're not afraid to go down the dark rabbit hole.
I know that's true.
The world isn't necessarily going to hell, but this is one perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody asked me, a good friend of mine who owns a big mortgage company, really, really sharp finance guy. He asked me about sort of the future and macroeconomics. And he was like, you don't really pay attention to that though, do you? And I was like, I mean, I pay attention, but I don't spend much time focusing on it because there's nothing that I'm going to do about it. You know, like what I'm going to do is keep living my life and just modify accordingly. That's it. Yep. So why would I get entrenched in this chaos that I cannot change? Doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I mean, it's the old, focus on the things you actually have some power over and whatnot. I think It's also just like, I don't think you can be a great marketer or a great copywriter without becoming a cynical son of a bitch, honestly. Because like studying copy on a really deep level, and particularly the kind of copy that I write, because I'm known for, I guess if I'm known for anything, it's storytelling and emotion in my copy, right? Those are the two things that I'm kind of considered best in the world at. But the more you study that stuff and the more you study the human nature, the more I at least started to realize that humans are fucking irrational, crazy monkeys, basically, right? So we're still driven by the exact same drives we had 20,000 years ago, but now we have computers and bombs, basically. So you have like...
Did you say computers and bongs?
Computers and bombs. We have all these things now.
Bombs.
Bombs. So you can have somebody like
Putin,
who's a quote unquote alpha male sociopath who back in the day, he could kill some people, but he'd have to have an army with spears to go do it. Now he can just push some buttons and kill millions and millions of people. But he's still just driven by the exact same like masculine drives to have power, to have your genetics go forward, all that other kind of crap. I just think like you study this stuff long enough and you start realizing the buttons you can push in people's brains with copy, and you start to understand that humans are fucked. Like we do not make rational decisions. We will not do what is best for other people, et cetera, et cetera. So for me anyway, I just kind of get to the point that I accept that and say, okay, with that frame of life where things are relatively difficult, how do you live the happiest and best life that you can and protect the people you care about and try not to be a massive asshole to everybody? It's my theory on life anyway.
So I like that. And those are, I could talk about that for 7 hours because I fundamentally, I think that is a fascinating approach to life. And I align with that pretty closely, right? It's just, there's all this stuff going on and you have an opportunity to dive down that hole at any point in time. Anywhere you are, you can find an excuse to bitch about something. But it's all your choice. So as far as copy goes, when you made a good comparison, which is, and you said something about monkeys, but
I did. Yes. Humans are monkeys.
Yes. So
we're just mammals.
And they behave the same in all circumstances. So how do you think about, and I want to break down ClickBank in a second, but how do you think, because a lot of people that listen don't know what the fuck that is. Don't know what that means. Different right. World, it's a very unique little sliver of business. Actually, so let's do that before we talk about copy. So what's ClickBank to you? How does it work?
So ClickBank is an online marketplace. I've been with them for over 10 years now. They started off being almost entirely known for digital products, information products, right? So like our buddy Mike Geary, he had his Truth About Abs offer on there back in the day. That's what got him really started to where he's at this amazing place now. Joe Barton, who's a good friend of mine, I wrote a bunch of offers for him, the mobile money machines one, but a lot like basically niches like dieting, make money online, relationship advice, things like that. They're just a major platform for that where they will host your offer and run all the processing and handle all the refunds. And also they have a big affiliate network aspect. So you can bring affiliates in that way. And that's how I got my entire thing going. Because when I started doing this, creating my offers 10 years ago, I didn't know shit about merchant processing. I didn't know anything about how to run a business or anything, but I did know how to write copy and I figured out how to create products and put them on ClickBank. And that's what kind of gave me what I needed to get started. And within a couple of years, I was doing really fucking well with it.
Got it. So can I restate that and see if my description is going to align?
Sure. Yeah.
It's so easy to throw words around that make total sense to people that are entrenched in the ecosystem.
Absolutely.
And one of them is like offer. So I have this.
Oh, yeah.
And people don't know what the fuck that is.
Sure.
So
fair enough.
So the general idea is that you've created a digital, in this case, we'll just stick with digital. You've created a digital offer, which is a product that is an information course on how to text your wife into bed.
Sure. So in that case, it was like a PDF plus some videos plus some audio recordings, but all digital, and you would download the stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So then you create a landing page, a website through the ClickBank framework, right?
Yep.
So you build it up through them.
Yep.
And when somebody fills out the form and buys, ClickBank does the credit card processing.
Yep.
And then it goes to another page where they can download the PDFs, access
it redirects to the fulfillment, and they can either we would have it set up where they would have to do some kind of login, or we just have them download the stuff. And that's just the long and the short of how that entire thing was set up. But yeah, we tend to call products offers, but the copy is the more important aspect of it. If you go to textyourwifeintobed.com, if you're listening, that letter is still up and it's pretty fucking hilarious, and you should go check it up. I think it's also was it Blowjob Genius? I don't know. I forget. I think it's oralfixation.com might be the other one. Oh, no, it's howtogethead.com is the other URL for the
I think that's what I read the headline from.
Yeah, how to get
so the other side of ClickBank that's attractive to people is that there's this massive network of affiliates, which are just people that know how to drive traffic. They know how to get people to a website. Some better than others, and some with more white hat versus black hat ways to get people to a website.
The black hat traffic is fun for a while. You know, you just you wake up one morning and you made like 40 grand and you're like, I'm just going to look the other way until that traffic goes away. Cool.
Right. Okay. And then you share the revenue with them. They take, 30 to 70% of the revenue or whatever.
These days it's more like 75 to 90, generally speaking. Yeah. It's oftentimes for ClickBank front ends these days, it's 90%. And that was really something that Mike Geary kind of pioneered. When he got started, the standard was 60%, I think. And then he pushed it up to 75. And then he got all the traffic. Right? Because he was paying out more and his copy was pretty good and he was doing well. And then since then, it's been really a drive to the top or the bottom as far as giving more and more to affiliates. But if you're like a really big deal affiliate who can drive a lot of traffic, a lot of vendors or offer owners or whatever will give you 100% of the front end, because we just want the lead. We just want the actual customer, because you can sell more stuff to them down the line.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's, that model exists in the rest of business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The famous Bezos quote is, your margin is my opportunity.
My opportunity, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so if you can acquire the customer and you can keep operating without trying to gouge and get a whole bunch of money on the front end, you can keep that relationship going and capitalize on it as you go.
Yeah. And there's two different theories on that kind of stuff entirely, right? You'll see a lot of offers on ClickBank that are somewhat scammy, quite honestly. You'll see a lot of things that are, these days they're doing a lot of supplements and stuff like that. And we all know that the supplement business there's some decent stuff out there, but it's largely hype and, largely bullshit, basically. I forgot where I was going with that entire thing. Oh yeah. Just that, I forget where I was going with this. My brain is mush today from.
You were just talking shit about people.
I was just talking shit about Brad Weimer and his Maddox Pitt, Mr. T mohawk that's up there. It's pretty awesome. Yeah. I admire it.
Thank you.
I admire your dedication to your mohawk and always have.
I only have a couple options. It's either this or shaving it all the way off.
Yeah, me too. So I went that way. Yeah.
I did carve out my beard the other day and rock the handlebars.
Nice.
Yours are stronger than mine, but mine was pretty funny.
Yeah, I've had this for like 4 years now, so it's a quality thing to have.
It is.
But yeah, the main thing with ClickBank is just understanding that that's what I was trying to get to. There are certainly people on ClickBank who their entire business model is just grind out the money, get as much money out of the customer as you can right away, understand that you're going to have insane refunds, get the cash while you can and run, basically. And that is a model that has worked for a lot of people. If you can get massive amounts of traffic and you can get an offer like Research or whatever else that does amazingly well, you can make a lot of money that way. Or you can go the path where you're, actually trying to build out long-term customer value and, get a lot of money at people out of long term.
Yeah, look, and I think that to me, the fundamentals there are a question of, do you want an offer or do you want a brand?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And if you're okay with having an offer and just burning the lead, then fine.
And a lot of people are. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And for me, that doesn't align with my internal values. And this is not a moral thing. This is just, it doesn't align with how I want to live.
Yeah. Me too.
No, for me, I ultimately want to create situations where everybody feels great about the outcome. That's the best thing in the world. Because even if I get my short-term outcome, if other people are pissed about it, my long-term outcomes then are not accomplished for me personally.
Yeah.
So I would rather build a brand where people point back to it and they're like, oh, that is the shit, right? I want to go back again.
Well, it's interesting because right now I'm transitioning what I'm doing largely because, for a long time I was focused entirely on the relationship advice stuff, the Michael Fiore stuff. And then I was really sick for a really long time. I had Lyme disease and then I got through the Lyme disease and it turns out I'm bipolar. Didn't know that for 40 years. So that was fun when my brain exploded.
I could have told you.
Well, I know you could have told me, but you didn't, Brad. Did you? You didn't. I think a lot of people could have told me, but didn't. But either way, I had a bit of a mental breakdown over that stuff. And that was fun. Took me 4 solid years to crawl back to sanity from that. So that was a good time. And then recently I decided to kind of switch over and start doing more like marketing education stuff, copywriting training, things like that. And it's a very different experience. I'm so used to working in the low ticket consumer niche ClickBank world where it's like $37, $47 front end, $100, $200 upsell. You're using cold traffic. It's a knife fight. It's like inches and fingernails every day. Every single percentage is amazing. And then I switched over recently. People have been asking me for years to do courses on copywriting and marketing. And so I launched a course back in December for $6,000 and we did $700,000 in 2 weeks, 3 weeks before Christmas during a pandemic with like whatever else. And I'm like, this is a totally different way of working when you're with the higher price point. And also the people that come in that way, it really is a relationship building kind of thing. Like I know those customers in a way I never knew my Michael Fiore customers, even though we had so many more Michael Fiore customers, but they were only paying $50 to $100.
Okay. But before I can ask you about the fundamentals of copywriting and breaking apart and those things, why did you create a pseudonym?
Oh yeah. Why did I create a pseudonym? I created a pseudonym because, a couple of different reasons. One, at the time, I had a pretty decent reputation as a copywriter. So I was doing some speaking. I'd actually done one course, but then I got distracted by their Michael Fiore stuff. So I didn't really want to go like create products under my own name and then have people be like, oh, Chris Haddad, relationship expert, and then do a Google search and find all the stuff about marketing. So that was reason number one. Reason number two, I'm Lebanese, Haddad, and America's kind of racist. Just kind of a thing. And I figured that having a Lebanese last name would actually probably have some negative level of whatever, because a lot of people that buy relationship advice stuff are pretty conservative and whatever else. And the main thing was just, it was a psychological protection technique in a lot of ways as well. And I'm really, really glad I had an alter ego or a pseudonym, because when I went on the Rachel Ray show, and then I wrote a book that was like an Amazon bestseller, and then I was doing all the podcasts, and I was on a path where if I hadn't gotten sick, Michael Fiore probably would have gotten somewhat mainstream famous or whatever else. I'm actually kind of glad that never happened, because that shit can fuck with you. But having the alter ego really helped, because when you get out there where you're on television and you're getting all these people telling you you're a genius all the time and you're making millions of dollars all of a sudden, you got a lot of people blowing smoke up your ass. And so Michael Fiore had a lot of people blowing smoke up his ass. He had a lot of women sending him naked pictures and, marriage proposals. He had several men threatening to kill him, and he had a stalker at one point. Right. And so both the positives and the negatives of that, I was able to kind of insulate myself from a little bit, because it wasn't me. the entire time, right? It was Michael Fiore instead. And so I found that to be really, really useful. Ryan Dice and I were chatting about this years ago, actually, and he was telling me how much he wished he had created an alter ego for his stuff before he kind of got started in marketing and all that stuff, because he just would have preferred that remove and being a little bit more anonymous, I guess. Also, Michael Fiore, it's my middle name and my mom's maiden name, and Fiore is Italian, which is way more romantic than Haddad is. So, yeah.
Well, great foresight. I feel like the marriage proposals and death threats and stalker probably were not foreseen, but the idea of
no, I did not foresee that part.
The idea of separating the brands was, and that's also, I mean, that's a very smart step to take ahead of time. And I think a lot of the time there's this balance for me of starting a new business or building a business where you have to think about the things that are likely to be really significant as you grow or scale it, or if you grow or scale it.
Yep.
And the things that, like, just don't spend your fucking time focusing on it. Just build the damn company. And that's one of them where it's a big decision, but it panned out being pretty good for you.
It did. And I'm really happy about it. The weird thing now is that now that I'm doing more stuff publicly as Chris Haddad, Mr. Moneyfingers Haddad, is that I don't have that same level of protection. Right. So I do my launch and I started my own podcast that's coming out next week. The first 3 episodes will come out next week. You'll be on at some point. It'll be great.
Love it.
But like, it's my name out there now, right? So like, we're buying traffic. We're starting to buy traffic for Chris Haddad, copywriting guru. And it's profoundly uncomfortable for me in a way that I haven't really experienced before, because it is me that's out there. And also that, like, with the bipolar stuff, it makes you into a profound, horrifying narcissist, right? So for a while there, I had my head pretty far up my ass and worked really hard to take it back out. And I do have some concern, my wife too, and we talked about this back in December, of when you're being a public figure of any degree, people just blow smoke up your ass all the time. And so we have to be having to be a little bit careful about not letting that kind of sink its teeth into my bipolar ego. Has been a really interesting challenge. But it seems to be going pretty well so far. I'm not that impressed by myself anymore. It's great.
Well, one of my favorite things about you is I had this moment where I thought I'm just going to blow smoke up his ass right now after all this commentary. But no, one of my favorite things about you is the desired sense of self-awareness, right?
Yeah,
The amount of time that you spend reflecting on the true drivers for things. And I think it plays directly into, like, you could hear it just now, but I think it also plays directly into the copywriting skills and how you craft things, because you have to be thinking about how the reader or the buyer is going to be perceiving these things and what their actual drivers are. So how do you approach the creation of, I'm going to say an offer, but just the language to sell something? If you want to write, say, a long form landing page where you're just creating the narrative and script to sell a product, is that formulaic for you?
It is, it's unconscious competence at this point in my life, because I've been doing it for almost 20 years, but it wasn't that way originally. These days, when I work on things, I'm really starting with the product almost always. I think a big mistake people make is they hire their copywriter too late. Right. They'll usually be like, oh, I busted my ass. I created this product. They go out and find a copywriter and they're like, here's the product. Here's the name of the product. Here's what's in the product. Create a marketing piece for it. But that's stupid, quite honestly, from my point of view, for information products. Anyway, what I want to do is I always want to, figure out what is going to sell, and then I create the product afterwards. Most of the time I'll write the entire VSL or sales letter before creating anything of the actual product, because I want to make sure that I can create a pitch that's actually going to sell, and then I can actually fulfill it later. But take, for instance, like we have an offer called Make Him Worship You, right? Created that offer several years ago. That was the last big Michael Fiore oriented thing that we did several years back. We ran a lot of cold traffic on it. We were doing 300 to 500 sales a day for a while back before iOS 14 just destroyed that whole business, basically. When I created that, what I could have done is sat around one day and been like, let me create a product that I want to create. But instead I was like, okay, what do I know the women's relationship niche extremely well now. And having been in that niche for like 10 years, I was like, well, what does that niche want more than anything? And I'm like, well, what that niche wants more than anything is for a man to worship them. So let's just create a product called Make Him Worship You. And the product idea came out of that line. Like I'm almost always come up with the name of the product before I do anything else, because to me, that's what everything else kind of hangs off of. right? So like make him worship you, text the romance back, text your ex back. Even the pig method course I just did, the name kind of encapsulates everything for me. And then it's just a matter of understanding human nature and what those drivers are and writing a letter that's going to key into the pain that people are feeling. And everyone's feeling kind of very, very similar pain is what I've kind of discovered over my life. Like, I think what makes me good at this is that well, you know these stories. Like I got in a really bad car wreck when I was 26 that I still deal with every single day. Was crippled for quite a few years. I had the Lyme disease stuff. I had the bipolar stuff go on. My dad died when I was 19, all that other kind of crap. Everybody has their crap. I'm not trying to complain or anything, but going through all of that has done a pretty good job of increasing my levels of empathy for things because I've been through horrifying pain and I've been through horrifying psychological pain, and I can kind of take those experiences and apply them to other people and what they're going through, and it seems to work pretty well. But I always tell people if they're trying to get really good at copy, get comfortable with your demons, get comfortable with your tragedies, learn to be friends with them because there's a lot of power that can come out of that. I just read a letter the other day that has a lot of stuff from my car wreck in it. And that's almost 20 years ago, but it still evokes the same feelings of chaos and lack of control that I want to impart into the person that's kind of watching that particular letter. Because I want them to feel what I was feeling when I was in that car wreck, because I can then use that feeling of lack of control to steer them towards wanting to buy something. It's creepy and clever, but it works. Yeah.
So two things. One, you're talking about information products when you talk about crafting.
Yeah, in that case,
the product first. Yeah, and in the headline or the name of the product first.
But even for physical stuff, I would do the same thing.
And the lesson there is very true across the board, no matter what your product is, which is find out what the consumers want before you create a product. Right. And it's not, even if you've already created it, it's not too late to go back and think about it and modify accordingly, because sometimes you can have small tweaks that have massive differences. Huge. Right? Yeah. Where if you reposition something a little bit, you end up with a totally different outcome. But the thing that you kept hitting on that I heard was pain, fear, anguish, demons. Right. Why is that? And by the way, we serve a huge community of people where the fear of losing their merchant account is a significant driver for a very good reason.
Yeah, because they can't. I've lost it before. It sucked. Yeah.
And it's a super common issue. And if they're not aware of it, we need to make them aware of it. Right. And we do that frequently in a lot of messaging through fear of loss. Right. I have some sense of where you're going here, but is that the main thing that you want to hit on in all your copy? Is it one of the elements? Does it depend on the product that you're selling? Is it a cornerstone? Are you playing into pleasure as well, or other human drivers? I'm
usually, let's see. I'm thinking about Make Him Worship You in particular. And that letter opens up with a line, one of my favorite lines that I've written in a long time, which is, he kissed me like his sister, and he kissed me like his sister, and I knew I was alone again. I knew I'd never stop being alone in the first place. Right. And that line and what comes afterwards is basically just, right. But like, I worked really hard on that line. And if you are a woman and you hear that line, especially if you're a 40-year-old single woman who's either divorced or has had her heart broken several times, you want to watch the rest of that letter because you see yourself in it, because you felt that exact same experience again, because you felt that hope that this is finally the guy who's going to be the guy for you, who's going to be your Prince Charming. You get all excited about it. You give him everything you can of yourself sexually, etc. And then he just goes away again. He kisses you like his sister. All the heat is kind of gone, etc. So I'm really trying to meet them where that pain is and where that anguish is from the very, very beginning, and then show them that I understand that the person who is in the letter, the narrator of the letter, understands them, empathizes with them, gets them, is just like them in a lot of ways, depending on how I'm writing the letter. And then we start bringing it more towards the benefits and more towards the positive aspects of it, where, you're going to have a man who is going to, pay attention to your sexual needs more than he does his own, who's going to protect you and, just be this powerful, amazing alpha male. You're going to wake up his masculinity. You're going to get everything that you want. But you have to know what women want in order to make that happen. You have to know what women really want from a relationship standpoint, which means getting realistic about humans again and understanding that, like, women, if you want to know what women want relationship wise, just read romance novels. That's all you have to do, because they're written by women mostly, and they're exactly what they kind of want. But it's like the powerful, strong alpha male who can have any woman he wants, but only wants her. That's the story, right? That's always going to be the story. It's Twilight, it's everything else. And it's finding ways to tickle those particular evolutionary triggers around wanting that kind of man is how you get the sale in that niche.
Yeah, that's insightful. Can you map that onto another
niche
area?
Sure.
Yeah, another product.
Yeah, let's talk about one of my biggest ones that I did years ago called Power for Home. It was a letter that I did for Chris Fox. It was a make electricity from your house kind of offer, right? So it was like a get off the grid kind of thing. The original version of that letter was basically, hi, my name is John. In this letter, I'm going to teach you a simple trick so that you can save money on your power bill so that even the government will have to send you a check or something like that, right? And that offer was doing okay. I rewrote the entire thing in a day, and I changed it from being about that to being about a guy. I believe the story aspect of that starts with something that is like, if you're a man, or if you're a father, even if you just have a heart, I'm sure you can feel how awful it was when my beautiful little 6-year-old daughter came padding into the room, her lips almost blue, and said, "Daddy, I'm cold." Right. And that story then goes on from there. It's not about, hey, I greedily want to save money from the government on my power. It's about a guy who felt helpless when the power went out at his house during a storm, and his beautiful daughter, who he, from a primal level, feels a profound desire to protect, wasn't being protected, and he felt like a failure as a man. And that's what led him on the journey to then go off and create the product, not because he wanted to save money on power, not because he cares about the environment, because the people that we are selling to in that case are pretty hard right and don't care about the environment fundamentally. They actually tend to be kind of hostile towards it for reasons. And then it was about a guy being enough of a man to protect his wife and his child and his family. And that doubled conversions literally overnight.
Wow.
That offer went from being kind of okay to being the number one thing on all of ClickBank for well over a year, maybe more like 2. I know I made like 350 grand on that letter, and I only had like a 10% piece of it. So it did okay.
So where my head goes immediately when I think about messaging for a specific product, where my head goes immediately with that is you went from a broader audience to only fathers.
True. Yeah.
Do you see that differently?
No, I don't see it differently at all. But here's the deal. It wasn't only fathers who bought the product, right? And when I tell that story, when I like show that letter to guys who are younger than me and you, in their 20s maybe, or in their early 30s, they still have an emotional reaction to that letter, and they will still buy the product, even though it's not entirely aimed at them, but it is aimed at that idea of masculine pride and masculine protection, right? Being a protector. It also will appeal to women who want to see guys being that guy, right? Like women, especially the more conservative ones, they want to see men being stereotypically masculine, stereotypically protective. It is very attractive to women to see a man sacrificing for his family, for his daughter, etc. So by creating that kind of specific situation, it actually becomes more general and has more of appeal to a larger number of people. It isn't just dads that are buying in that case, but it's also creating this feeling of, well, you want people to like the character. You want people to like the narrator or the guru, whoever it is too. So having those little things where they care about their family, they care about their wives and God and all that other kind of stuff is really, really useful. But it's just about emotion. It's just about telling, stories are the operating system of the human mind, man. Stories are how many stories have you and I told during this call right now, right? Like over and over again. That's how we communicate. It's how we get engaged in things. People spend all day watching the news and or Netflix, and all that is stories, because that's what, evolutionarily speaking, that's how we were evolved to learn things and how to communicate, was through stories. So I use them to sell stuff.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's, in some ways, it's probably refreshing to consumers as well to see, there are different words for this, right? But native advertising, right? To see something that is a story that's actually engaging versus just getting an ad, just getting a pitch.
It cuts through. Right? It cuts through in a different kind of way. And when I put up letters, if you'll go to my VSLs, most of my VSLs anyway, it depends on the product to some degree. I don't even mention there is a product until 10, 15 minutes into the entire thing. Like there's no mention of it whatsoever. It kind of gets weaved in throughout the letter to the point that it kind of gets brought up eventually. But I'm not saying like, hi, I'm Michael Fiore and I want to talk to you about Text the Romance Back or anything like that. It starts off with a situation. Our language desire offer did phenomenally well for quite a few years there. It was like 5 years. It was in the ClickBank top 10 for like 5 years I never changed a word of the copy. I never really did any work on it because I was busy almost dying. But that one opens up with, I think it says, it says, talk dirty to me, he said on our 1 year anniversary. We were in bed alone. I felt my heart freeze and whatever else. But it's about a woman who's in a situation where her boyfriend, her fiance, asked her to talk dirty in bed, and she freezes the fuck up and can't do it. And then she wakes up in the middle of the night and finds her boyfriend masturbating to porn in the living room to a woman who's talking dirty. And then she goes on a mission to learn how to talk dirty and gets really good at it. And then he never wants to watch porn again. And then good things happen, right? But why does that work? Well, it works because I know that porn is the Freddy Krueger of that niche, right? Like the women in that niche see porn as a tremendous threat. And I know that women in general, especially if they're interested in buying a product about relationship advice stuff, fundamentally do not feel like they have confidence in their sexual abilities or their abilities to get men to pay attention to them. So you just create a story that evokes all of that for them. And again, that thing sold like fucking gangbusters. That's what bought my house. So, hey, yeah. It's a nice house.
I believe that. I have not seen it, but
yeah.
Do you have, so I like the selling through stories.
Yeah.
And I know that you said at this point, you don't think about it from a formulaic approach necessarily because it's been internalized.
Yeah.
But
there is a formula though. I created a course on it and everything. Yeah. So,
oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Well, so what are the elements of it if you have them off the top, and does it map onto any other sort of story-based arc, like the hero's journey?
It's very similar to, it's an adapted version of the hero's journey, basically, right? And so the hero's journey, if people don't know, is basically what every single Hollywood movie is based off of at this point, right? You look at Star Wars, you look at The Hobbit, you look at, Duke Bigelow, Male Gigolo, whatever it is. Those are all kind of going to be based off the hero's journey. So Deuce Bigelow, Male Gigolo. They're all going to be based off the hero's journey to some degree. What I do with my stuff is it's kind of an adapted version because the greater hero's journey is a much bigger kind of thing. And, you have to kind of resolve the stories in a satisfying way for the audience. Whereas when I'm writing things, I don't really want to resolve the story for the audience. I want to maintain this tension so that only by buying the product and using it will they feel that resolution to the actual story. But the really short version of how these things are laid out is always, there's a moment of crisis where the person who is the narrator or the guru of it comes to a point where they're basically like, hey, I either need to give the fuck up but acknowledge that I'm never going to solve this problem, or I need to get off my ass and fix it. So for instance, with Make Him Worship You, Kate has that moment. She says, he kissed me like his sister and I knew I was alone again. And for her, that was like, holy fuck, it's happened again. I can either become an old cat lady and give up on men, or I can discover the truth and go out and find these things, right? So then she has that choice. She has to sit down late at night, usually while eating ice cream, and make a decision whether to give up or not. Then she goes off and she starts doing research to discover what the truth is. She runs into dead ends as she goes, where she tries things usually that have people have tried before, like dating coaches or, going on Tinder or whatever else, but it blows up in her face. Then she has to discover the truth somehow. In this case, she did that by meeting Michael Fiore, some weird guy. He didn't have a mustache though, totally different dude. And then he teaches her these secrets. She uses the secrets. She gets results for herself. She then, gets everything that she dreamed of with her boyfriend coming back to her, and they have amazing sex. And now they're going to get married and also the great stuff. She shares it with other people. They get amazing results. And then she is almost forced to create a product or get Michael Fiore to create a product. And then you get into the actual pitch. And those are going to be the core components of pretty much every single version of this you do. I have several students who just put out their own versions. And, if you know what you're looking for, you can see the bones of it. If you don't, you have no idea. Right. But you have to really know what the structure is. But structure is everything for copy anyway. It's always going to be, there's always just going to be these chunks that have to be in every single letter that you do. They're always longer than you think they're going to be.
I think that's that's all pertaining to sort of long form direct sales or direct response pitches, right?
Well, but if I was doing a podcast type pitch or something like that, I would do the same thing. If I was just speaking on stage, it's the exact same format. I just have gotten really good at applying it to specifically to like video sales letters and shit like that. That's where I kind of made my reputation, I guess, and most of my money.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess I'm thinking specifically, the way that you're laying it out would be long form, would be story format versus, but I suspect that the elements, those core blocks or core components could be jammed into short form in a different way. It would just be, where do they go? And what do you have to cut, right? What do you have to modify in order
but also like, why do you want to do it short form? Right. This is the thing that we run into all the time. When I first got into this business years ago, I was like, who the fuck reads these long form letters? Nobody reads this shit. To this day, I think I've only watched maybe 4 video sales letters end to end in my entire career. Like I've never seen most of mine. I could not tell you what the visuals are for most of my videos more than 5 minutes into them, because I just don't care. It's not something that I have the patience for or whatever, but that doesn't matter because they work. Right? Like, it doesn't matter if I watch them. It doesn't fucking matter. What matters is you put it out on the internet and we try long form versus short form, and the long form wins, right? Almost always, not always, but almost always, the long form is going to win. Even if long form doesn't win as far as having like a 40-minute video, there's still going to be multiple touch points. You're still going to need those same elements kind of layered in over time. Like, a product launch, like a Jeff Walker style launch, is really just a sales letter that you take sideways. And instead of being like, hey, you're all going to go through it all at once, you just break it up into pieces and release those pieces over time. But you're still doing the exact same hits as you go, right? All the way through it. Even though each video might be 5 or 10 minutes instead of 40, eventually you're getting more to like 2 hours of content that you're putting out during the launch. Like you can't skip. You just can't skip anything, right? People are always like, oh, if I make it too long, nobody's going to read it. If you make it too long and it's boring, you're right. Nobody will read it. If you make it long and you know what you're doing, people will fucking read it. Or the people that are going to buy something will read it. The other ones, why do you care anyway?
Yeah, I had this, I like the idea of the long form and taking it horizontal and creating the client experience over time, even if the initial buy-in or opt-in was quick, reiterating the sale or continuing to push the sale over time. So that's great. I've had this internal struggle throughout life with interrupting people. And I'm sure that this is my parents doing, right? Don't interrupt. Don't interrupt, Brad. And so, and I think, by the way, a lot of guys also have a problem approaching women because they're afraid to interrupt and they're afraid of getting the rejection when they interrupt, right? Hey, the interruption is bad, right? Yeah, specifically if it's a group.
Yeah,
right?
Horrible. Yeah.
And years ago, I had this shift in my thinking, which was everybody loves positive, entertaining interruptions.
That is true. Yeah.
Right? It's not the interruption that's a problem. It's an interruption that sucks. It's an interruption that is not entertaining and positive.
You're absolutely correct.
So that long form is a bother in your day unless it's engaging, entertaining, exciting, etc.
Where you can see yourself in it to some degree, right? Like I have the number of times I have had male friends of mine from the business tell me they were watching one of my VSLs because they wanted to study it, and their wife walked through the room and stopped and watched the whole thing with them, right? Like, and it's because I'm pushing the right buttons. Now, if you ask those women, would you watch a 45-minute sales video? They'll say, no, of course I'm not going to do that, etc. But if you know what you're doing, you know the right emotional buttons to push, you can bring people in and then use empathy and use emotion in a powerful way to kind of bring them through, make sure that you understand them and make the sale. But it's also like, never ask people how they want to be sold. Like, they're not going to, like, what are they, like, I don't want to be sold. I'm like, cool, great. It's just about, I don't know. For me, it's just, I'm all about data-driven stuff on these things, right? I just want to see what works and what doesn't work. And I'm not going to let my personal prejudices about what I want to work get in the way of it. Or what would work on me even, right? Because I'm a different market than who I'm selling to most of the time.
Yeah, I have that conversation far more than I'd like to, where I just have to kind of pause, take a breath and say, you are not the target market for this. Don't worry about it. Your opinion of whether or not you like this you would do this
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter at all.
It is right? When I talk to young copywriters who I mentor and stuff like that these days, so often they're like telling me that their client came back and said, I don't like this part, and I don't like this part, and I don't like this part. And I'm like, what you need to do is put in your contract, they have to test your fucking copy like you wrote it. Right? Because otherwise you'll get these people that don't know what good copy is and don't know what they're doing, and they'll pay you some money and they'll change all your copy and they'll put it out and it'll bomb, and then they'll blame you every single time. Right? But as a copywriter, hopefully, if you're any good, you're the professional here. So you need to present yourself as a professional. You need to be like, no, I'm not your employee. I don't work for you. I am a vendor who knows what I'm doing, and I'm giving you a service for money. And if you do that, you get a lot more respect, you get paid more, and they'll actually put your shit out there and find out if it works or not.
If it works.
Yeah.
And hopefully.
And it might not. That's okay. Not every single thing you do works. Honestly, if you're too afraid of making sure every single thing you do works right out of the gate, you're never going to get anywhere, because that's not how you innovate. That's not how you come up with new shit, right? You just, if you're just doing the exact same thing over and over.
Yeah. I mean, that's true of almost all areas of life.
Exactly. Yeah. Be brave, be bold.
That's the motivational speaking coming out of you.
Well, I am quite a motivational speaker. As you know, I'm so the secret. You know me. I'm the most cynical, anti-secret person in the world, but that's okay. I like to motivate people, though. Yeah, I just do it from a more atheistic. I do it from a more atheistic, realistic standpoint. But I'm also still like, yeah, let's get out there and do shit.
So speaking of, I have some memory of you, and I might be totally wrong here, but I have some memory of you writing a Christian offer.
I did. Yes, I did write a Christian offer. I wrote an offer called The Salvation Diet with a buddy of mine years ago. That was about, and the core idea for that was, why are Christians so fat? Because Christians do tend to be really fat, but that's largely because Christians are often in the South, and America's really fat in the first place, and the South is obese. So what do you want? I did that offer. We did okay with it. I was still really sick at the time, so I wasn't as focused on it as it could have been. But honestly, I have a good friend who's Jewish who runs the biggest Christian offer online. So what do you want? Yeah.
I love that. I think it turns into, and this is not a religious thing. It just turns, to me, it's just a fun game.
It is.
You can identify so clearly the value set of a group and say, okay, I know how to sell to them as a result. Yep.
But also, ethically, the way I tend to look at it is like, I have a friend who runs numerologist.com. Right? Really big site, really big offer on ClickBank, has done really well with it. The guy who runs it is not into numerology, but he knows a lot about numerology. Like, he's studied it. He knows it. For people that believe in numerology, that product is legit. Right? Like for people that, if you believe in numerology and you want the principles of numerology that have been developed over all these years to be applied to that product, you are getting a product that is high quality, that is exactly what you want. And the guy who wrote it doesn't believe in numerology, but does that really matter? Because you're still getting what you would consider to be legitimate stuff.
That's a good point. I like that. I think that's actually a very valuable consideration for somebody that would critique the previous part of our conversation. Absolutely. But I just feel like your responsibility is to give good information as far as the people that are in that niche would consider it, right? So I want my stuff to be as good as humanly possible. You also need to love your market, right? Like, when I was writing for that niche, I don't dislike religious people anyway. I'm just not religious myself. I have conversations with people about things. There's things about religion, organized religion, I personally don't like, but I don't dislike religious people as a whole or anything like that. But when I'm writing for them, like when you're writing for a market, you need to love them. You need to understand them. You need to empathize with them. My ex-wife would ask, she's like, who are these women who buy this Michael Fiore stuff? And I'd go, those are the women that bought our house, and you will fucking respect them. Right? Because they're not sad, pitiful people. They're women who have not been able to find the man of their dreams and are really pissed off about it because they were told when they were 16 that he was going to show up. Same thing with the Christian people. When I'm writing for them, I'm just like, no, I'm trying to see the world from their viewpoint and to empathize with them and to understand them. It's almost like, this is not a one-to-one thing, but you talk to actors about the characters they play. Like Samuel L. Jackson was talking about a character he was playing who's a reprehensible person. And he's like, yeah, but when I'm playing that person, I'm not playing a reprehensible person. I'm playing a human being who became that person due to what they were going through in their life. And they are the hero of their story. Everyone's the hero of their own story. That's great. Well, I would like to continue talking when you're in Austin next time.
Yeah, totally, man. Let's do it.
Well, I'll find an excuse to get you here. I'm sure that we can get you on stage or speaking at a mastermind.
Bring me down for something, man. I'd love to. I'm excited to get back out on the road a little bit now that I can actually do that. And Angie is in good enough health that we can pull that off again. Yeah,
definitely. Well, where do you want to point people? Where can people find you?
thechrisHaddadshow.com or chrishaddadshow.com. So it's the Chris and then HADDAD show.com. And you will get to my brand new spanking website where we are launching my podcast soon. I'm assuming it'll be up before you actually release this into the world, probably.
And you'll have a picture of yourself there with my mohawk photoshopped onto your head. Is that right?
That sounds fucking awesome. I would totally do that. Yeah. The problem is your head is narrower than mine, so I'm not quite sure.
It's true. I have a bird.
Yeah, you do. You have a bird head.
You don't really have an Ernie head, but I have a bird
head. You definitely do have a bird head. It's I would not want to get I wouldn't want you to just like run towards me and spear me with your head. I think it would rupture some things, but especially with that mohawk, dude. You get that thing pretty well sprayed up. I'm sure it's very, very stiff and dangerous.
Got it pretty dialed these days.
Totally. 2 minutes.
Cool. Well, Chris, appreciate the time, man. Looking forward to next time.
Absolutely.
If you learned one thing on this episode, share it with another entrepreneur. They need to hear it. Also subscribe so that new episodes just show up on your phone. It's a lot easier that way. And if you want the really good stuff, check out our free BAM! Tactics and Strategies course. It's where we curate the best tips, tricks, and tools that our guests know, whether they've shared them on the podcast or not. Just go to beyondamill.com. You'll also find previous episodes and show notes at beyondamill.com.